This is Trump in an interview with Time magazine published today. Question: would you fire a U.S. attorney who didn't prosecute someone you ordered him to? Trump: it depends on the situation, honestly. Question: so you might? Trump: it would depend on the situation. Yeah. That is from an extensive Time magazine interview that just came out today, and it is chock-a-block with news. Reporter Eric Cortellessa got Trump to actually talk about his plans for a next term if he wins one. And those plans are wow. Like, for example, here's a question from Cortellessa to Trump. You said, "We want to protect police from prosecution." What do you mean by that? Trump: police are being prosecuted all the time, and we want to give them immunity from prosecution if they're doing their job. Now, what Trump is alluding to here is the notion of qualified immunity, which you might remember as a central focus of the Black Lives Matter movement. Qualified immunity is the legal doctrine that allows police officers to avoid personal consequences related to their actions on duty unless those actions violate clearly established law, which is actually a very hard threshold to meet. In practice, that qualified immunity has meant a lot of police officers have killed Black Americans in particular, without consequence. And Donald Trump is all for it, wants more qualified immunity, in fact. When confronted with the fact that violent crime is going down throughout the country, counter to what he has been saying for months and months now, Trump says simply, "I don't believe it." He explains, "The FBI gave fake numbers. It's a lie. It's fake news." So Donald Trump is insisting police have immunity to fight a crime wave that doesn't actually exist. If you are missing the racial subtext here, there is this. Question: polls show a majority of your supporters have expressed the belief that anti-white racism now represents a greater problem in the country than anti-Black racism. Do you agree? Trump: oh, I think that there's a lot to be said about that. I think there is a definite anti-white feeling in this country, and that can't be allowed either. Throughout this interview, Donald Trump also explains his plans if he retakes office. And the most shocking of those plans have to do with immigration and abortion. Question: you've said you're going to do this massive deportation operation. I want to know specifically how you plan to do that. Here's Trump. So if you look back to the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower was very big on illegal immigration not coming into our country, and he did a massive deportation of people. As a model for his immigration policy, Trump is referring to President Eisenhower's catastrophic deportation of around 1 million Mexican immigrants, known by a code name that happens to be a racial slur: Operation Wetback. It is a dark chapter in American history. The U.S. government used sweeps and brutal military-style tactics to round up Mexican immigrants and ship them out of the country. And from the name to the execution, the whole thing was incredibly racist and brutish and ended up accidentally deporting a ton of people who were actually U.S. citizens. That is the model Donald Trump wants to emulate. Now, Time magazine reporter Eric Cortellessa didn't just let all of that slide. He pressed Trump. He made sure he was correctly understanding exactly what Donald Trump was saying. Here's more. Question: what's your plan, sir? Trump: we will be using local law enforcement. Question: does that include using the U.S. military? Trump: it would. Question: U.S. law says that you can't deploy the U.S. military against civilians. Would you override that? Trump: well, these aren't civilians. These are people that aren't legally in our country. This is an invasion of our country. That is how far Donald Trump would be willing to go to enforce his draconian immigration policies. He would use local cops. He would use the American military. He would break the law because he doesn't consider immigrants to be civilians. And then there are his plans for abortion. Question: your allies in the Republican Study Committee, which makes up about 80% of the GOP caucus, have included the Life at Conception Act in their 2025 budget proposal. The measure would grant full legal rights to embryos. Is that your position as well? Trump: I'm leaving everything up to the states. Question: would you veto that bill? Trump: I don't have to do anything about vetoes because we now have it back in the states. Question: do you think states should monitor women's pregnancy so they can know if they've gotten an abortion after the ban? Trump, I think they might do that. Again, you'll have to speak to the individual states. Question, states will decide if they're comfortable or not prosecuting women for getting abortions after the ban, but are you comfortable with it? Trump, it's irrelevant whether I'm comfortable or not. It's totally irrelevant because the states are going to make those decisions. There have been very few times where Donald Trump has been asked in detail about what he actually plans to do if reelected president. So this is a really rare and an essential piece of journalism here. Trump comes across as both uninformed but also remarkably cutthroat, willing to embrace extreme, harsh policies and willing to countenance unimagined cruelty. As much as Trump's answers are often garbled or opaque, they are still the clearest, most detailed outline we have had so far, laying out what happens if Donald Trump becomes president once again.